shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Behave yourselves!
Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry Saravia at the movies. So finally I got around to seeing Sound of Freedom, which is a new film from director Alejandro Monteverde, and this is an Angel Studios production. They started shooting this back in 2018 and finished it about a year or so later, and have been trying to get this released in theaters, and obviously didn't really come into fruition until now. Even Netflix had turned them down. So I have to say, let me start off by saying that I did a video a couple weeks ago referring to Sound of Freedom and the issues that allegedly there were occurring at AMC theater chains. Air conditioning going out, the lights staying on in the movie theater, people being forced out because the AC wasn't working, and so on and so forth before the film was even over. I didn't have any of those issues, and I did see it in an AMC theater chain. So probably a lot of this for sure is self-generated nonsense to justify the controversy that the film is already receiving, when in fact you don't need any real extra juice to sell it. You know what I mean? The last thing a movie theater wants to do is to force people out of the movie theater. One of you out there, Tim, had told me that, and you're absolutely right. So the only issue is that, of course, what was interesting, though, I will say this, is that as I got through the half hour of commercials and trailers and so on, usually when they do the AMC logo introduction with Nicole Kidman, the lights dim and, you know, the movie is already about to start. Well, they didn't actually dim right away until after the closeout with Nicole Kidman. Because at first I thought, wait a minute, they're leaving the lights on. Also, the film was not exactly presented in the right aspect ratio. That is to say, actually, I think the aspect ratio was fine, but the screen was a lot lower than it should have been. There was all this headroom at in front of it, like a little black band, which you shouldn't really have when you're seeing a movie. But anyway, otherwise, it went off without a hitch, so no issues. So what do I think about this movie? Jim Caviezel, who most of you would know as Jesus from Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, stars in this film, and he plays a guy named Tim Ballard, who's an actual person who had worked for Homeland Security and served as an agent to find people engaged, let's just say, you got to be careful how you phrase these things on YouTube, so let's just say pedophiles, we'll leave it at that. And using computers, you know, you get the picture. So he finds the pedophiles, he arrests many pedophiles, and that's kind of how the story starts. And but he has an interest now really in finding the children, which is viewed as an impossible task by the Homeland Security Office. And of course it would be, because once a child is taken, they may be taken to one place, and then they could end up, as one of the special agents says, in Moscow. They might not be in Honduras or Mexico or wherever the hell that you think they might have ended up. They could be circulating these kids everywhere. So the film deals with child trafficking. It's not exactly a new subject, but it is an important subject. It's still very much a disturbing subject. Anytime you hear about lost kids in the media, missing children that never turn up, they sort of vanish, I always think of child traffickers, first and foremost. That's the first thing I'm thinking, that they're being trafficked and into sex slavery and all that stuff. So Tim then decides that since Homeland Security is not going to really handle the bill for finding these children and bringing them into scenarios where they could retrieve them and take them away from the child traffickers, he starts an Operation Underground Railroad, OUR, which is an anti-trafficking non-profit rescue organization. And this is, of course, for real. So one of their first goals is to find, there's this kid that you see earlier in the picture named Miguel, who had been, let's backtrack. At the beginning of the picture, the father's bringing Miguel and his sister to this curious little place where they're going to be auditioning for roles. It's not clear if it's a TV show or a theater thing, more likely a TV show, something of that nature. Whatever it is, turns out it's really just a cover for stealing these kids and putting them into child trafficking. So we follow the story of Miguel, who is codenamed Teddy Bear, and his sister. Now, Miguel is eventually found, and Tim feels that perhaps whoever stole Miguel, he'll be able to find the people that stole the sister and find her location. Because when they find Miguel, they don't find the sister right away. So there's this, a bit where the child traffickers are convinced to go to this Jim Caviezel's Tim pretends to be like this wealthy guy, this rich kid who owns an island. So they feel that if the child traffickers can come in there and bring the 50 children over there, and once they do that, that will be the operation where the kids will then be retrieved, taken away from these child traffickers who will be arrested, and so on and so forth. So the goal is still to find the girl, but she is not amongst these kids at the island. Then there is a remote part of the Amazon jungle in Colombia where a rebel enclave exists, and it's a no-fly zone, very dangerous, and Tim is convinced that he can go down there, but the police tell him, look, this is an impossible mission. You can't. Nobody can go in there. You could be killed easily, and that's that. So they pretend to be medics, and only one of them is allowed to go down there. And that's, of course, Tim. And, of course, he finds the girl, and so on. Now, the odd thing about this movie, Sound of Freedom, which has become quite controversial and a hot-button issue, as it well should be, the odd thing about the movie is that the outrage is somewhat muted. You know, when I was watching this movie, I didn't feel as if I had a real rush of adrenaline or intensity with regards to this disturbing subject matter. The film plays it very, very low-key, including Jim Caviezel's performance, who is really the perfect actor to play this role, because there's something about him that he comes across as a beatific, saintly figure in repose. You know, it's kind of like playing Jesus again, except this guy, you know, he can kill people. But it's so muted. I just never felt the outrage. It was muted to me. It was softly rendered. And you only feel a modicum of anger when you hear sometimes on the soundtrack these Mexican songs sung by childlike voices or sopranos. And but except for a couple of moments which are understated and in their power, the movie, it just didn't feel, it needed urgency in its veins. You know, I was talking earlier about The Passion of the Christ. Say what you will about that. Mel Gibson as a director would have been perfect for this. He would have really taken this as far as he could, and he would have made us feel the urgency. It's not to say that this is not an important film because of the subject matter, but that doesn't make it a good film. It's an okay film. You know, I mean, if it's your first introduction into this alarming subject, that's fine. There have been other films about this type of subject before. Interesting that Mara Sorvino plays Tim Ballard's wife in this movie. She herself is an advocate for finding children, but she also appeared in 2 different films about child trafficking, one of them back in 2005 called Human Trafficking with Donald Sutherland. So definitely the movie has good intentions, but intentions are never quite enough. You still need drama, and it's not to say there isn't sufficient drama from knowing what this mission is for Tim Ballard, but at the end of the day, it assumes Tim Ballard's righteousness is sufficient for drama. And the film, as a result, even though, again, it's not a bad film, but it just feels very, very low key. And I wanted to really feel the overwhelming sense of loss, of childlike innocence. And it wasn't there in this movie. I have a feeling that perhaps in the future someone will make a film that really deals with this. I don't know if that will happen beyond this picture, which of course no studio wanted. But I'm hoping it happens, because I think that this picture deserves much more nuance than what's delivered here. And it seems like it's a setup for something that never quite pays off, other than the rescuing of these kids. But the real pressing problem is these kids are being kidnapped in the first place. That is the real pressing issue. Finding them, of course, is a pressing issue, but it doesn't always happen. Stopping this madness from continuing is really, I think, what I was hoping for in this movie, was to really feel that urgency, and I didn't feel it. So, an odd movie in a way, because it does work in spades, and I like Jim Caviezel, but I just didn't quite connect to. I didn't quite connect to the story the way I had hoped. It just felt like, okay, this is what's happening. It feels standard issue in many ways. It feels sometimes like a made-for-TV movie. It just does. And nothing wrong with made-for-TV movies, but here was a chance to really push beyond the margins and really explore this issue. Really bring out all the drama, all the stops. Because there's more to this than what we hear in this film, or even about Tim Ballard's story. Just overall, this is an international issue. And I just wanted more urgency, I guess. So, beyond just the occasional tears on Jim Caviezel's face. But either way, that's what I thought about Sound of Freedom. So I'm glad I did see it. But more keen to see some other pictures I hadn't seen that dealt with this issue and compare. So what do you think of Sound of Freedom? Have any of you seen it? What do you think of Jim Caviezel? Let me your thoughts. Tell me what you think. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to my channel. Let me your thoughts, and hit that bell notification for any new uploads. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.